Okay, we're good. So first of all, I just want to say welcome. We appreciate everyone being here tonight. I'm John Westney, Superintendent of Centerville City Schools. This is Laura Salver, our treasurer. We have just a few introductions that we would like to go through this evening before we get started. So first off, we'd like to take the opportunity to recognize some of our school board members who are here this evening. Our goal tonight is to provide you some factual information about the district and information as to why we're here and some of the things that we're doing across the district. And they'll be here to help answer some of our questions later this evening. Starting off, Dr. Rohr here in the front. Our president of the Board of Education is Allison Dernball. New to the board is Dr. Graff, who's with us this evening. John Dahl just entered the room, so John is here with us as well. And Megan Sparks back here in the corner. So I appreciate the opportunity for them to be here to help listen to the presentation and be able to help answer some of our questions. I'd also like to take a minute to introduce some of our central office staff that'll be available throughout the night to help answer questions. Mr. Tarpey, the Assistant Superintendent and HR Director here in the front. Shannon Morgan, our IT Director here as well. We have Sarah Swan, Communications PR Person. I have Sheree Colopy, Elementary Curriculum. Tammy Durup with Student Services. And Becky Furby with Special Education. I believe she is still out in the hallway. So I think I've covered everybody. Did I miss anybody? Adam, I know is here. I know he's got a basketball game. His daughter is a senior on the basketball team, so he'll be leaving probably by the time we get to questions. But Adam Trell is Secondary Curriculum, and Chuck Kogel, our Director of Business Operations. So again, I appreciate them being here this evening as we go through this presentation. We've started a lot of our presentations over the last few months just talking about disclaimers. The information being presented tonight is factual. We are permitted to share neutral, factual information at any time, and we are permitted to attend public meetings and present information about district finances, activities, government actions, even if it's an election, a levy or bond issue being discussed at the meeting. Tonight, we want to obviously share a lot of information since the levy on the November ballot was rejected by the voters. We have been discussing how to move forward. The two community meetings held in December gave us a better insight into the questions and concerns surrounding school finances, and we want to continue that collaboration and maintain open communication with the community. So tonight we want to share with the community why we are returning to the ballot in March and how much the levy will cost property owners and how the district will reduce spending in response to community feedback.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here tonight to share this information with you. And we're going to start by talking a little bit about school funding, kind of just a basic overview of a few things. And if you've been at recent board meetings, if you came to the December forums, you've heard this same message, but we're going to go over a few things again this evening. So we receive federal money, state money, and local property tax money to fund our school districts. And the amounts we receive is actually the lowest to highest in the orders that I mentioned those. Federal funding is specific grants that we receive for very specific purposes, like for reading or special education. We receive some state money from the state of Ohio that helps fund our day-to-day operations. But the majority of our operating revenue comes from property taxes. And this is because Centerville the reason it's the majority is because Centerville is a high wealth district. So we're on a guarantee from the state. We don't receive much additional funding from one year to the next. So that level of revenue stays very flat in terms of our planning every year. As I mentioned, what I'm talking about there is our day-to-day operations. And we're going to get more into that. Mr. Westney is going to talk about those day-to-day operations here in a few minutes. But in general, it's to pay our staff, the majority of our staff. It's for classroom materials, utilities throughout all of our buildings, some of our repairs, things like bus fuel. Those are all considered day-to-day operations. And so those are the funds that we're talking about. One of the things that's very challenging and that's been a very hot topic, so to speak, throughout the county for the last almost a year, but for sure 6 to 8 months, is the property revaluation. There's a law in place that was passed in 1976 called House Bill 920, and that House Bill 920 freezes the amount of revenue that we receive from voted levies. And so just to talk a little bit more about that, and I did a very in-depth or a more in-depth presentation to the board at the most recent board meeting. That video is online on our website if you would like to hear that more in-depth conversation. It was also put out on social media from what we call a Finance Friday video that you can view it there as well. But again, on the voted levies, we receive the same amount of revenue from one year to the next. We do receive a small portion, increased portion of revenue when property values go up from inside millage, and that is factored into our 5-year forecast. And we've had that factored into our 5-year forecast because we knew that Montgomery County was going to see a large reappraisal in 2023. And so this state law makes it difficult for school districts across Ohio to keep up with rising costs. So we all feel it in our homes, inflation, things cost more. That happens for the school district too. And so with flat revenue or relatively flat revenue, it's very hard to keep up with those rising costs. And so this graph is kind of a picture to show what happens when a levy is passed. When we pass a levy, our revenue typically will exceed our expenses for a year or two, and we can add to our cash balance. You can see with the green arrows that dated all the way back to 2005. Those were levies for new money that was passed. And for the couple years after that, our cash balance increased because, again, our revenue goes up, but eventually our expenses start to outpace that level of revenue and we start to deficit spend. And then you can see the downward trend before the next green arrow when the next levy was passed. And so we build the cash balance a little bit, and then our expenses exceed our revenue, and we cut into that cash balance, and then we have to ask voters for additional revenue. That is what we refer to as a typical levy cycle. It's very normal and customary for school districts to have to ask voters for new revenue every 4 to 6 years. We are required to file with the Ohio Department of Education a 5-year forecast. This particular forecast is out on our website. It's also on ODE's website. This was filed in November. And you can see the red circle there in the numbers. I know that you in the back, you can't see those all the way back there, but in 21 and 22, you see black numbers there. We were in the black, so to speak. And so our revenue was outpacing our expenditures after the 2019 passage of the most recent levy from 2019. And then starting last school year, in fiscal year 23, we started to deficit spend. And then that deficit spend continues until we can, we're working to address that now, and that is, we have two choices, or a combination of the two, and that's to increase our revenue through a tax levy or to reduce our expenditures. And so we're talking about both of those pieces tonight.
So we like to take a look at some of our district expenses, and so let's look more closely at the operating funds why our operating funds and what they are being used for. The primary need for additional funding is to maintain the quality educational programming and services that we've traditionally had here in Centerville City Schools. Mrs. Sauber has mentioned state law freezes the amount of revenue school districts receive from voted millage, which makes it difficult to keep up with inflationary costs and of doing business. The next couple slides will cover the district's day-to-day expenses. With our mission to empower, challenge, and support every learner to grow every day, that's our focus as we look at the decisions that we're making, is keeping our mission in mind in making some of these decisions. Over the years, our district has performed well on the state report card. This past year, we received the highest mark that a school district can achieve. exceeding all expectations in all 5 report card components. It's our job as educators to meet our students where they are and to help them grow academically. Students' mental health affects their educational experience and academic achievement, as well as school safety. K-12 schools are facing unprecedented levels of mental health challenges, a trend that began long before the pandemic, and must provide continual supports to meet student mental health needs. Here are just a few statistics that we would like to share from the U.S. Surgeon General's office from a 2021 report. From 2009 to 2019, mental health challenges were the leading cause of disability and poor life outcomes for young people, with up to 1 in 5 children in the United States having mental, emotional, or developmental or behavioral disorders. Between 2007 and 2018, suicide rates among youth ages 10 to 24 in the United States increased by 57%, becoming second leading cause of death for individuals in that age range. In Ohio, 1 in 3 students report challenges with anxiety. The number of high school age students with major depression episodes has nearly doubled over the past decade. So mental health continues to be a concern for us as a district. We need to continue offering college and career pathways that prepare our graduates to be responsible members of society and a member of our workforce. About 90% of our seniors report that they plan to attend a 2 or 4 year college in the future. We have rigorous academic programming, including 27 AP classes at Centerville High School. Many families are taking advantage of College Credit Plus, a state requirement that comes with no additional state funding to support it. We have been fiscally responsible by offering more AP courses versus having students take College Credit Plus courses off campus. By law, schools in Ohio must provide career technical education programming for our high school students, either locally, like we do with our compact, or by sending students to Miami Valley Career Technical Center, which is up in Inglewood. We have had a partnership with Kettering, Oakwood, and Centerville City Schools to be able to provide career education programming here within our community that's allowed us to save taxpayer money to keep that money here versus sending those tax dollars up to Miami Valley CTC up in Inglewood. This year we have 535 juniors and seniors. It's nearly 40% participate in 19 programs that are offered at offered in total. 12 of those programs at Centerville High School and 7 at Fairmont. The bottom line, students must earn credits to graduate. If they weren't taking CTE, career technical education programs, or AP courses, they would need to be in other academic courses. Centerville schools are also known for going above and beyond the basic requirements, which makes our district a great place for students to learn. Our community has supported fine arts at all levels, a broad range of AP and career education courses, world language classes starting in our middle schools, and all this helps our students as they prepare to be well-rounded, contributing members of our society. Often we hear graduating students talk about all the educational options that they've experienced, as well as the leadership opportunities and a sense of belonging that helps them prepare for life after high school. Continuing with district expenses, as with many school districts, the majority, about 87% of the district's budget is spent on salaries and benefits for all staff. We need the right staff in place to provide a well-rounded education for children in Centerville Washington Township. We're also dealing with aging facilities. The average age of our schools are 59 years old. You are in the oldest building in the district tonight here at Magzig Middle School that just turned 100 years old this year. The last major renovation to our buildings took place after a bond was passed back in 2005, nearly 20 years ago. At that time, remodeling projects were completed at every building across the district. In 2020-2021, we conducted an assessment of all of our facilities, which provided us with about 2,700 pages of maintenance needs, timelines, and costs of projects that need to be completed. Our business department uses the information to prioritize maintenance projects throughout the district. The majority of these projects are paid for through the district's permanent improvement fund that separates from the operating or general fund, and PI funds can only be used for facilities and projects for our buildings. Although this levy that is on the March ballot is earmarked for operating expenses, those funds can also be allocated towards facility maintenance if need be. We also continue to implement safety and security measures like additional security cameras, visitor management system, access controls on our doors. We've applied for many grants over the last several years. In fact, last year we awarded over $850,000 in grants to help secure or complete some of our security projects across the district. Schools are not immune to rising costs. So just one example of a cost of a 72-passenger bus has risen up over 39% over the last 4 years. And the price of fuel, bus fuel, is 55% higher. So the cost to the district is about $300,000 more in bus fuel this last year for a similar amount of trips that we've had from year to year. We've mentioned that our state funding remains relatively flat from year to year. But additional requirements are added to the district's plate regularly. College Credit Plus is one of those examples that we've talked about tonight. Another example is our gifted programming or gifted identification. As a district, we are required to provide services for all students who have been identified as gifted. It's close to 30% of our students here in the district, and provide professional development for teachers who work with those gifted students. We spent more than $1.1 million in fiscal year 23, but only received about a quarter of that in state funding. There are many more unfunded or underfunded state mandates that we must follow.
So on March 19th, we have issue 18 on the ballot. And I want to talk a little bit about that levy ask and how much it will cost the homeowners. So in December, after the November levy failed, we held community forums, we talked to the staff, and we asked for feedback about our finances. And so we've changed this request a little bit here in March. It was a 5.9 mil combination for both operations and permanent improvement. We've reduced that down to 3.9 mils. Part of the reduction was because of the property reappraisal. A mill is worth more now in Centerville and Washington Township compared to what it was in 2023. And so part of that reduction was due to that. But we did reduce it even lower. So the original ask was going to generate $12.9 million a year. This 3.9 mil request, if passed, will generate $11.2 million. Coupled with that, as I mentioned when we talked about the 5-year forecast, we have two ways to work on that deficit that we're in, and that's to increase our revenue or to reduce expenditures. And Mr. Westney will be talking about the reduction of expenditure part, since we're asking for a reduced amount in this levy. So the cost per $100,000 of home value, and this is the new value that you have as determined by the county auditor, is about $11.40 per month. And you can look all of that information up on the Montgomery County Auditor's website if you search for your property. All you have to do is type in Montgomery County Auditor Property Search, and it will take you to a website that you can search by name or you can search by your property address, and you can look up your historical value, you can look up what this levy will cost. There's actually a tab that says New Levies or Proposed Levies, and you can look that up there as well. And again, I talked a lot about this in depth at our January board meeting, that if you want to hear that more in depth, you can take a look or listen to that video from January.
So now we just want to share some of the immediate reductions that were made and following the November election, as well as our phase reduction plan that we introduced last week to the board and received board approval on January the 22nd. To recap, the levy on the November 7th ballot was rejected by the voters. The levy that was that levy would have raised, as Laura mentioned, $12.9 million per year to fund operations and permanent improvements for the district. The only way for us to eliminate the projected deficit is to pass a levy or make reductions or a combination of both of those items. We implemented some immediate cost savings measures to include limiting new hires and substitutes for support staff positions, minimizing overtime across the district, and cutting any non-required field trips. On December the 18th, the Board of Education passed a resolution to be back on the ballot for a 3.9 mil levy on March 19th of 2024. This reduced levy request, along with gaining some budgetary efficiencies through reductions, will allow us to stabilize our budget for the next 4 to 5 years. Those budgetary efficiencies will be realized through a phased reduction plan, which was approved by the board during the January 22nd meeting. Some guiding principles. As we looked at the potential for reductions, our team tried to keep in mind some of the guiding principles to help us with that decision making. We mentioned several times tonight that we're trying to incorporate feedback from the community, from all of you that are here this evening. We want to minimize the impact to the classroom. We also want to realize that any cuts that we make will be a reduction in our services and will impact the quality of education for our students that our students receive. We try to think outside the box, looking at not just positions but other ways to save money through various service contracts and increasing fees, etc. This slide shows the total positions that would be reduced in each phase. And you can see the anticipated savings to the district's general fund, which include other cost savings in addition to the personnel reductions. We'll go in depth in the next couple of slides and to look at each phase, but you can see with the 2 phases here would total up to almost $3 million in reductions. So with phase 1, because of the reduced levy request, we need to gain some budgetary efficiencies through our reductions. We've come up with this phase plan to share with you. We will implement phase 1 to start the 24-25 school year, regardless of the levy outcome in March. We anticipate a savings of about $1.27 million from the district's general fund through the following reductions. Reduce 4 certificated teaching positions, which would include a math teacher at Centerville High School, a science teacher at Centerville High School, 1 special education teacher from Centerville High School, 1 middle school education teacher. Looking at reducing 10.5 classified positions. That would include 5 paraprofessionals, which are special education teacher aides, 2 custodians, a bus driver, and 2.5 clerical positions. We also plan to eliminate 11 academic volunteer building coordinator supplemental stipends and savings from new staff by hiring new staff at the lowest possible salary to replace retiring certificated staff. Savings from reducing how much the district pays for some of our contract rental fees, I mentioned that earlier, and increase preschool tuition by 10% for typically developing students. In the second phase is really about what will happen if the levy fails in March. Phase 2 of the reduction plan would be implemented for the 24-25 school year only if the March 2024 levy is not passed. These reductions are anticipated to save an additional $1.62 million from the district's general fund. Again, it's in addition to phase 1, the $1.27 million to combine almost $3 million in reductions. If implemented, this phase would reduce an additional 10.75 certificated teaching positions, which include an English language arts teacher at Centerville High School, 1 math teacher at the high school, a career education teacher from Centerville High School. We're looking at 2 middle school physical education positions, 4 elementary general education teachers, one elementary special education teacher, and then a .75 school counseling position. In addition to that would be an additional 16 classified positions would be reduced, be another 5 paraprofessionals against special education teacher aides, and 11 clerical positions. So I think in all, if you combine both of those, phase 1 to phase 2, it's 41 different positions across the district. We're also looking at increasing school fees for pre-K, pre to kindergarten students from $50, it was to $50, the current rate was $45. Increase school fees for student grades 1 through 8 to $75. Currently they've been paying $60 in their fees, and increase pay to participate fees by 20%. So just to give you an example of the pay to play or pay to participate fee, CHS athletes would pay $270 per sport, which would be a $45 increase. Middle school athletes would be looking at $162 per sport, $27 increase for middle school students. We're also looking at increasing building use fees by 10%, increase our athletic field rental rates by 25%, and evaluating some of our supplemental contracts for additional reductions. So the impact on teaching and learning. If the levy fails in March, how will this impact our students, teachers, and our families? Well, we're trying to minimize the impact on our classrooms. If we reduce personnel, it will have an effect on the quality of educational programming and services that we've been able to provide to our students. If we cut support staff positions, classroom teachers have to provide that extra support, which can take away from the learning experience for our students. For example, in some cases, we have support staff who have supervision duties that reduce those positions. By reducing those positions, teachers are pulled into more duties outside the classroom and have less time to meet with students and respond to parent needs. Whenever we lose classroom teachers, that results in larger class sizes. For example, if we reduce the number of PE teachers in our middle schools, we're looking at about a 20% increase in those class sizes for physical education, which is a required course for us to offer. There are still requirements that we must provide, but without additional revenue, we will have to limit some of those learning supports, personalized instruction, and elective choices that we have in place. We will be increasing several different fees for our families and for our organizations that rent our facilities. So that concludes our presentation. I know we've covered a lot of information tonight.